Redemption Republic of Liberia in 1972, and also here in Kenya, he got the Order of the Burning Spear, MBS 30 class of the Republic of Kenya. Thank you.
For your elaboration on what has brought us here, and of course, the information about the very Reverend John Gatu, who he was. We appreciate your time. Ladies and gentlemen, it is now my humble duty to welcome the Vice Chancellor of the Presbyterian University of East Africa, Professor Wangari Mwai, to officially welcome all of us to the university and recognize invited guests. Let's welcome the Vice Chancellor, ladies and gentlemen.
Asante na shukrani. Naomba kwa sababu Jitegemea ni Kiswahili na ni kitabu ambacho kimeandikwa kwa Kiingereza, tuchanganye dini. Wengi wamezungumza Kiingereza this far, nami nitajaribu kuzungumza Kiswahili. Nitajaribu. Sijaribu mimi. Tunaongea tu ya Jitegemea juu ya himizi, kwani tuendelee kwa Kiingereza sana. First of all, I want to start by salutation. Na wasalimu nyote katika jina la Yesu. Bwana asifiwe. Bwana asifiwe. Okay, thank you so much. Naomba nianze upya. Na wasalimu nyote katika jina la Yesu. Bwana asifiwe. Tukutendeleza. Haleluya. Shukrani kwa Maulana kwa siku njema aliyotuandalia. Tutafurahi na kushangilia kwayo siku ya leo. Kwa Baba mkujufu, na tukua fursa hii kwa niaba ya bodi ya wadhalimu wa chuo hiki inaongozwa na chancellor wetu ambaye ni moderator na SG ni mmoja wao. Pia kwa niaba ya baraza la uongozi wa chuo hiki tuna mmoja wao Karo. Naomba usalimie, you're one of us. I'm the director of the board of governors, na jamii yote ya Pwea, kuwakaribisha nyote katika chuo chetu kikuu cha Pwea. Mgeni wa heshima, profesa wetu Pierre Lumumba, katibu mkuu wa kanisa la Presbyterian nchini Kenya, mchungaji Daktari Robert Waihenya, wageni waliotajika, familia ya mchungaji na kasisi mkuu Daktari Yohana Gatu, jamii ya Pwea, wageni waalikwa, tualika kwa mikono miwili katika chuo chetu. Katika ndoto zetu huku Pwea, chuo hiki chetu twakipa jina la kiutani la Harvard ya bara letu la Afrika. Na bila shaka kwa batana na Biblia, kama Yusufu alivyotuangazia katika maisha yake, kama binti yetu Lupita Nyong'o alivyotoa ushuhuda katika maisha yake, ndoto zetu zitatimia na zaendelea kutimia kwamba hii ni Harvard ya bara letu la Afrika. Our dreams are valid. Tawakaribisha, karibuni Pwea, na mjisikie huru na mjisikie mko nyumbani. Pwea ni chuo ama taasisi iliyosajiliwa nchini Kenya kama chuo kinachofuata imani ya Kikristo, Faith-Based Chartered University. Kwa wageni, hiki ni chuo kinachoendelea vizuri sana, na tunaona mkono wa Mungu. Wakati huu tuna jumla ya wanafunzi 3,000 na zaidi ambao wako katika shule zetu 3 zenye sifa sana. Shule ya kwanza ni shule ya biashara ambayo ina masomo ya biashara na kijamii. Shule ya pili ni shule ya ualimu ambao tuna mafunzo ya ualimu wa sayansi, ualimu wa sanaa ama arts, na pia ualimu wa mahitaji maalum, special needs, na tuna elimu ya ulezi na saikolojia na mengine mengi. Tuna mafunzo pia na shule ya mafunzo ya afya, tuna uguzi yani nursing, na pia tuna tiba ya kazi yani occupational therapy. Hapa tulipo ni chuo maalum, tunazo viunga kama vile Rubate, Nakuru, Maua na Tala, ambako masomo yetu yanaendelezwa katika viwango tofauti kama certificate yani stashahada, shahada, ya mchungaji Yohana Gatu. Tunatoa shukrani za dhati kwenu kwa kuchagua kwaya kama kikao chenu siku ya leo. Sherehe hii lazima iandaliwa katika chuo kinachotangamana na kanisa la Presbyteriani. Kama sio kwaya, pengine pangestahili wapi? Wapi pengine? Twajivunia. Twashikana mkono nanyi kwa kumbukumbu hii kubwa ya baba na babu wa kiroho. Nasema haya kwa sababu mchungaji Gatu alikuwa mpenzi na mwanzilishi wa chuo hiki. Historia ya kwaya haiwezi andikika wala kukamilika kamwe bila kumtaja kasisi wetu mchungaji mkuu Gatu. Pia kwaya ni chuo kikuu kinachoendeleza usomi, utafiti, ugunduzi na uvumbuzi. Mchungaji Gatu alikuwa msomi wa hadhi ya juu sana. Kama tulivyoarifiwa, alizaliwa huku Kiambu Mechi tarehe 3 mwaka 1925. Alisomea vyuo vya teolojia tofauti kama cha Mtakatifu Paulo katika Limuru, Edinburgh, Pittsburgh na Princeton. Mchungaji Gatu alitia fora na anaendelea kusifika katika nyanja za usomi na teolojia. Alitajika zaidi kwa sababu ya mjadala aliowazilisha kuhusu kusitisha wamisheni na hata fedha kutoka nchi za kigeni kuendelea kutumika katika kueneza Injili katika nchi zinazoendelea ama za ulimwengu wa tatu, hasa katika bara la Afrika. Kutokana na watu na 1975, wanafunzi wengi wameandaa tasnifu, na mimi nimewahi kusoma mbili tangu tuanze kuandaa siku ya leo. Nimesoma tasnifu mbili ama thesis mbili kuhusu maisha, kasi na falsafa zake. Kwa maoni yake, bara letu na nchi zinginezo za rika lake zinapaswa kuwa huru kujiendeleza na kueneza Injili zenyewe badala ya kutegemea msaada wa wamisheni au marupurupu ya kifedha kutoka nchi za kigeni. Utegemezi ni hali ya utumwa na kutokuwa na namna ya kujisimamia, dependency syndrome. Huu ulikuwa ni unabii na ulipingwa na walio wengi, hasa usimamizi wa kanisa kutoka nchi za kigeni. Maono na unabii huu wa mchungaji mkuu kasisi wetu Yohana Gatu ulizusha mijadala na madubano ambayo yanaendelea hadi wa leo. Maoni haya ndio mzizi wa falsafa ya mchungaji Gatu ya Jitegemea, ambacho kitabu chake tunakifunua leo, na inaendelea katika utumizi katika kanisa la Presbyteriani nchini Kenya na barani Afrika. Leo tutaungana hapa kujadili kwa undani maono na unabii wa mchungaji Yohana Gatu. Tunajivunia kuwakaribisha nyote na kuungana katika kuelewa, kufafanua na kuchagua falsafa ya Jitegemea. Msimamo wa kanisa yetu na madhehebu yetu kusimamia njia moja ya uongozi kutoka utumwa na utekaji nyara wa akili zetu, the decolonization of the mind. Chuo cha kwaya cha kudhamini mchungaji Gatu sana. Chuo hiki kilichoanzishwa na kusimamiwa na dhehebu la Presbyteriani kilikuwa chuo kidogo cha uzani na teolojia. Zama zile mchungaji Yohana Gatu alikuwa katibu mkuu wa kwanza wa Afrika wa kanisa letu, First African Secretary General. Pia akawa moderator au msimamizi mkuu wa kanisa letu katika mkutano mkuu wa 9 na wa 10 wa kanisa hili, General Assembly of the Church. Daktari Gatu ni mwandishi na mtunzi wa nyimbo za kumtukuza Mungu. Ni mshairi mahiri na ni mwandishi wa vitabu tofauti kama vile Joyful Christian, Free African na tafsiri yake ya autobiography Hand in Flame. Kanisa na siasa wameenda sambamba. Mara kwa mara mchungaji Gatu hakuaibika kujitukuza katika siasa. Gazeti la Daily Nation nchini lilitaja tafsiri yake kama mlipuko ama explosion, na kuhimiza kwamba mchungaji mkuu Dr. Gatu alikuwa katika mstari wa mbele kwa kuangazia pengo zote alizoshuhudia katika uongozi wa nchi ya Kenya. Nitanukuu kwa Kiingereza, Dr. Gatu, we will remember he was speaking out against excesses of previous governments, especially that of President Daniel Moi. Siasa za jinsia si haba kote ulimwenguni. Mchungaji Gatu alisimama kidete katika utetezi wa ukasisi wa wanawake ambao ulipitishwa na mkutano mkuu wa General birthday wa 1976 kwa muhtasari, leo hatungekuwa na pahali mwafaka pa kusherehekea mchungaji huyu na uandishi wake wa kipekee kama watoto lake la chuo kikuu lingepigiwa patupu. Alikuwa mwanaharakati wa kipekee na kanisa letu limesimama wima na kuendeleza chuo chetu. Kama Yusufu wa Biblia, mchungaji wetu alifuata ndoto zake mpaka zikatimika. Kama Yohana katika Biblia, Yohana Mbatizaji alitangaza unabii wa falsafa ya Jitegemea ambao imepamba moto hadi wa leo. Hatuna budi kusherehekea haya yote na mengine mengi yanayomhusu mchungaji kasisi, msomi na mwanaharakati na mwanafalsafa huyu siku ya leo. Langu ni kuwakaribisheni kwenye sherehe hii na pia kuwasihi mjisikie huru kuchangia kwenye kuelewa falsafa hii kwa undani zaidi, kwa sababu ukweli utatuweka huru. Bwana asifiwe. Karibuni sana. I want to recognize a few friends who are India. Wageni mashuhuri ambao wameingia. Bila shaka nashukuru sana profesa mwenzangu Profesa Piero Munga ambaye ni Mwanaafrika halisi na najua kwamba yeye anatoki. We thank God for you, Professor. We adore your work and your stance all the time. Welcome, Reverend Dr. Robert Waihenya, our Secretary General. Karibu sana. He's also a member of our Board of Trustees. We have the chairman of the foundation. There he is, Banakuria. Karibu sana. We also have Professor Father, talking later, but welcome. Welcome home. We have apologies, but I also want to recognize this Professor Mungani, not yet. Not as yet. And Dr. Joya, lovely Joya, I recognize you when wanaharakati wezi pitwa watu wakitajwa. I want to say that I welcome all of you. There's a representative from Kikuyu Hospital. Kikuyu Hospital, ila ametumwa na Bwana Jamhuri. Thank you so much. We have many priests. Anybody else would like me to recognize? Oh, please come back. There are very many. Kapaka sisi ni wengi, tuinue mkono tubariki watu. Everybody anakola na Jitegemea na leo. Thank you so much. The family, familia iko wapi? Familia, just raise up. There you are. Thank you and God bless you. Thank you. I'll leave it there. We have the prayer family. DVC, you're there. Registrar, you're there. Lecturers, walimu wako hapo. Bahati tunao. Wanafunzi tuko wapi wanafunzi? Well, barikiwe sana. Amen. I know we are going to know people as we go on, watu wanapoendelea kutoa hotuba zao, tutawaona, tutawajua zaidi kwa sababu kwa kweli holi imejaa watu wazuri. You all look very beautiful. God bless you. And have some.
Asante. Naibu wa Chancellor wa Chuo Kikuu cha Mbeya, Profesa Wangari Mwai, asante kwa ueledi wako wa lugha ya Kiswahili. Bila shaka umejieleza vizuri tena bila dukuduku na kusita-sita. Nakushukuru sana, asante. Asante pia kwa kuchora taswira kamili ya maisha ya kasisi Daktari Yohana Gatu. Asante. Let's appreciate the Vice Chancellor once again. Thank you. God bless you. Asante sana. Now we are going to invite the choir for the anthem of the Jitegemea anthem. Karibuni wana choir. Let's put our hands together for the choir as they come for the Jitegemea anthem.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Bwana asifiwe. In the main theme for this lovely occasion, we present the Jitegemea anthem. So for now, you're just going to listen to the words, and later on, because we'll still have another point that we are going to present it, then we are going to give you copies, then we can sing along. But for now, we present the Jitegemea anthem.
Sijasikia makofi ya kutosha ya Jitegemea anthem. Asante, bila shaka ubunifu maridadi kweli hapo wa wimbo huo, mwito wa Yesu tujitegemee. Ndugu, tuitikie mwito wa Yesu wa kujitegemea. Tuweke makofi tena kwa wanakwaya kama walivyoeleza, basi hapo baadaye tutakuwa ni wenye kupata wimbo huo ambao basi utakuwa ni wimbo ambao utakuwa unaimbwa kama wimbo wa Jitegemea anthem. Mabibi na mabwana, naendelea vizuri kwa kweli. Asante Profesa, bado nazidi kushukuru. Umefanya udadisi Profesa Wangari Mwaji, na niona kwamba wewe ni msomi na profesa wa lugha ya Kiswahili, kwa hiyo nakupongeza kwa mara nyingine. Tumpatie tena Profesa makofi. Asante. Nataka kuchukua nafasi hii, ndugu zangu na dada zangu, nimkaribishe sasa mwenyekiti wa Himidi Foundation. I want to invite the chairman of Himidi Foundation, Reverend Dr. Blossom Kuria, to come and introduce the family and also say a few words. Let's put our hands together for Reverend Kuria.
Thank you, MC. I want to say that I'm happy to be here. This is not my first time to be here.
here first, even when there was no fire here. And it was all bush. When I say that, I know some of you agree with me. My fellow minister, Dr. Joanne, was that very well. And the other people, like, I can see Johi there coming in level of the seminarios. We cleared this place with those people in order to plant what we call today the Presbyterian University of East Africa. So I'm happy. Let me say what let me say about our Vice Chancellor, about Kiswahili. Happy Kiswahili. I used to work in Mombasa, but happy Kiswahili. Even some people in Mombasa will not understand. So thank you very much. Our chief guest, Professor P. Rumumba. Let me say one thing about it. When I moved to Gambo, I wanted to buy a plot for my family. Your office, then you are working with Muite, processed all the paper that were required for me to get title deed. So I thank you for that. All those work, you worked for me. So I honor you. Our guest speaker, Professor P. Rumumba, the Vice Chancellor of this university, Presbyterian University of Africa, my wife, known by that name, Wangari. So I will tell her that I met Wangari. No, I met Wangari. And all PIPs who are present here, in the hands of faculty and departments, ladies and gentlemen, I greet you in the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, who is also my personal Savior and leader in the ministry, which I have been practicing for more than 56 years. Ladies and gentlemen, the very doctorate Humane Foundation appreciate those who have done it with us for the cause of correcting and coordinating and editing these comedian essays to bring them into a book that we have today called Jitegemea. East Africa has committed the sale to championing the Jitegemea Book Lounge. We have been working with the university towards even accomplishing the wishes of the Reverend Dr. Garatu. We will continue to work together with the university and also be engaged by the media foundation so that we can in return, in the year or the years come, establish an endowment, as it has been mentioned by University Registrar, and also we established an endowment in the university. So today, what we are doing is to launch a book. We will have many activities in the future. The media foundation, and also where and some of us who will be called upon to help in this endeavor. The Media Foundation published already those 4 books I have mentioned. I believe because the Media Foundation will continue to work, because the work that John Gato has been doing is for the church and the world. So what we are doing today reminds me and reminds us all together that the Reverend John Gato is presenting yet again his vision to the church and the world. Although Jitegemea is a concept that is very new, that many people do not understand, we will also, as the Media Foundation, try to define exactly what Jitegemea means. Some may say it is a philosophy, or some may label it with another name. I heard what Dr. Joya said when about Jitegemea. Alisema Jitegemea philosophy ni mtoto wa wokovu. That's what he said. And I'm sure this tells a beginning of what he said. We will, in the big foundation, work tirelessly to make sure that we see what Reverend Dr. intended to communicate to the church and the world is communicated. And this is why, honestly why, he made the foundation, he invited our guest speaker, because our guest speaker currently he is concerned. He is concerned with what is going in the world. For instance, in the good governance, in the culture, and many other things which, instead of building human being as make human beings to live as good, ready to see the way they live. What our guest speaker is bringing there goes very well with what Gato did start before he left us. Therefore, it was not an accident. But we chose our guest speaker to be none other than our guest speaker, Professor P.L. Lumumba. And before I see it, because the main foundation has come out of a family, and it is also in a family. If you are around me, I will invite Elder Richard, give a share to show us who are these very John Gato family who have been naturally given the foundation to go ahead this now. Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Dr. So, Chairman, may I ask the family, ask all the family of the very Reverend Dr. John Gato to stand, and if you could stand where you are. Is it possible to come here very quickly? I know my sister may be attached, but please do come here. We are not many. We are not that many, but members of the family. Na tusimame vile tumezoea kusimama. Najua tumezoea kusimama namna gani. Najua kusimama kwa namba. Number 1, number 2, number 3. Ladies and gentlemen, our chief guest, Vice Chancellor, and the General Secretary, the PCA. You know, Professor Joroge knows many of these fellows here. He's part of the family in a way. So, this is the family of the late very Reverend Dr. John Gatu. I'll start with whom we refer as number one, who is our elder sister here, Naomi Modoni Jogona, and her husband Jogona, Philip Jogona. And we have here our second sister, Mrs. Gashango, wife to the late brother, and our children, Wangari and Jogoni. And then number 3 happens to be me. And here with my wife, Beatrice. And this is the moderator. This is John Gato. And his wife, Lucy. This is my Momoniwa, Idaiga. And his wife, and apology from Grace, his wife. And this is my brother, Gashango, and his wife, Nyawera. And this is the grandchild, and the name of Whitney Gato. And hatujachelewa sana, tunawahubiri pia. And this is Reverend Dr. Moses Nairo, a nephew, who is named after Reverend Gato's brother. So that is the family. We are very glad to be here. Quickly, I also mentioned other people who would have been like to be here. Reverend Dr. Dairo and Dr. Macmillan Keyo, who was one of the elders in the authorship of the book, and he was not able to be here. He is away in the US. Another member of the family who was with us, that is Priscilla Nyaruilo Jogona. She also happened to have traveled to the US. She would have really have liked to be here. Actually, she's arriving tomorrow or something like that. She is missing this event, but she has been with us. So, thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Elder Elisha Kibashia Gatu. Like Professor Kindiki would say, I thank you. Let's put our hands together, ladies and gentlemen, for Elder Elisha Kibashia. Asante. Thank you very much. Before then, there was Chairman Dr. Blossom Kuria. We thank you for your remarks. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to invite another man here, a man of God. This man is the vice facilitator of the beautification of Maurice Cardinal Tunga. This man has been professor at the Catholic University of East Africa. This man is an accomplished author. Currently, this man is teaching development studies and ethics at Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology. This man serves as Catholic chaplain at JKU Art. Ladies and gentlemen, put your hands together for Professor Father Lawrence Joroge.
Asante sana kiwanja wa mambo yanayoendelea leo kwa sababu ya makaribisho yako. Bwana asifiwe. Bwana asifiwe. God is good and all the time. Kwanza ni kumtolea Mwenyezi Mungu shukrani kwa sababu ya nafasi hii. Nafasi hii ya kuwa hapa. Tunapokizindua hili kitabu Jitegemea cha John Gatu, na tunafanya hivyo katika hali ya sala. Si kuzindua tu, it is not simply mere launching of the book. We began with prayer, and we are in a context of prayer because we are persons of faith. Na kwa hivyo neno langu la kwanza ni kumtolea Mwenyezi Mungu shukrani kwa sababu ya kuwa hapa, kuwa kati yetu na kuwa katika hili jambo la uzinduzi wa kitabu hiki. I have already been introduced, I am Lawrence Joroge, a priest of the Archdiocese of Nairobi. I teach in JKU Art in the College for Human Resource Development, and I am one of the chaplains in JKU Art. And I was asked to convey the regards of the other chaplain, the Reverend Dr. J.K. Wakafa, who is very well known to quite a number of the pastors, and who serves as the Protestant chaplain, while I am serving as the Roman Catholic chaplain. And as has been mentioned, I work in the beatification office, the office of the Archbishop of Nairobi, whose responsibility is to work to see that the servant of God, Maurice Michael Cardinal Otunga, is declared saint. The person who is the director is in Rome. I am the person who is directing the national office. And to conclude that point, I am here not only in those capacities. I am very, very honored to be here because I am a friend of the very Reverend John Gatu family. And indeed, when I was training for the priesthood, as I shall be narrating very, very briefly, and I am also acutely aware of time, it is the Reverend John G. Gatu family from Kiamuria, when I was a seminarian at the Gatito Catholic Church, that encouraged me very, very much in my training, and some of them would come and visit me at St. Thomas Aquinas Seminary in Nairobi, and therefore I regard myself and I am regarded as a member of the Gatu family. I would like to thank first of all, most sincerely, Mr. Kevashi Gatu, the family of John G. Gatu, and the very Reverend Gatu Himidi Foundation. And I want to thank them because of the great honor for having been invited to celebrate this event in this remarkable Presbyterian University of East Africa, Puer University, which counts the very Reverend John Gatu as one of its pivotal founders. And very, very grateful for the very warm welcome. Kiraja, Madam Vice Chancellor, Wangari Mwai, Professor Wangari Mwai, I know you are also a canon. Thank you very much on account of your warm welcome, a great welcome. I can say without fear of error that I came and immediately I felt at home. And I am very, very much at home. Just as I have been at home in the John G. Gatu family. Na kwa hivyo shukrani kwa sababu ya makaribisho yako, na ni vizuri kuwa na nafasi hii ya kuwasiliana nanyi na kuwa na watu wengine tunapozindua hiki kitabu, and even as we come here to listen to the insights of Professor P.M.O. Lumumba. This is a great honor. The last time the family invited me to speak, to celebrate the life of the Reverend John Gatu, was at the All Africa Conference of Churches, where the Reverend Gatu was celebrating his 92 years. I was invited to that occasion, and that occasion was graced by the presence of Professor Kabiru Kinyanjui, Dr. Wangui Gashehe of the University of Nairobi, the Reverend Dr. Father Dominic Wamugonda, Dr. Peter Kieri Njoroge, and many other scholars. And there were believers from the PCA and many other faiths. I was then glad to bring the students from JKU Art to wish the Reverend John Gatu a very happy birthday. And today, years later, I am glad to be accompanied. There is a priest here from the Catholic University of Eastern Africa, Father Chris Kirich. I know he is somewhere. He is a student of Jerry Kagere. Yeah, I know that he is here. He is waving from there. Shukrani kwa sababu alisema kwamba sita ya hapa yeye atanileta hapa. Na yeye Padre Chris ameweza kufika hapa na kwa hivyo shukrani. I was asked to say a few words and I am going to keep telling. The reason I was asked to say a few words is I am an occasional writer for the Daily Nation. I do occasional pieces. I have done that before, even during the days of Hillary Well's weekly review. I would do book reviews, and therefore I have done it for quite some time, and that is the reason I was asked to be here. But first of all, let me give the context of this book. And I know I have been given 10, 15 minutes. I do not want to exceed that time. This remarkable book is essentially a book on the divine human encounter. And it is not simply a divine human encounter in a vacuum, it deals with real issues. And this book, the Reverend John G. Gatto, over the years of his remarkable and effective ministry in the church, his reflections, this is what we are encountering here. The divine human encounter that is dealing with real challenges here and now, challenges of the nation, challenges in the family, individual challenges. That is what this book is about. I first met the Reverend John Gatto in the early 1970s at his parents' home in Kiaboya, Gatundu, County. The first time I met him, he was in his mid-40s. I guess he was about 47. And I remember it very, very distinctly. He had led the Gatto Gashango family in organizing the 50th anniversary of his parents' marriage. What I remember most distinctly was the Rev. John Gatto dressed in a short-sleeved shirt, literally serving and waiting on his parents and the guests present. I was then a seminarian studying for the Catholic priesthood, and I was based at the Cathedral Catholic Church, not far from the Gatto homestead. The Reverend Gatto serving his parents, for me, was a metaphor. It became for me an image, one of those vivid metaphors and images you do not forget. It created an indelible image, the image of a person who serves, and therefore the image of selfhood and service. And in the same early 1970s, many of us students from St. Thomas Aquinas Seminary in Nairobi would ask for permission to go to town in Nairobi to listen to the famous Professor Joseph G. Londas at St. Paul's Chapel of the University of Nairobi. But I must make a confession here that some of us found our way to listen to the equally moving homilies of the Reverend John G. Gatto at the neighboring St. Andrew's Church. We had been sent to go to St. Paul's Church of the University of Nairobi, the Catholic Church. We would go, but then some would go to St. Paul's, and the others made sure that they went to St. Andrew's in order to listen to the homilies of the Reverend John G. Gatto. And when we reported back home to the seminary, we would say, yes, we have listened to thought-provoking homilies, because they were indeed thought-provoking homilies. the Reverend John G. Gato preached to the nation. He preached to the Kenyan nation from there. And he was able to touch the hearts of people irrespective of religious affiliation. He was always an ecumenist, bringing people of different traditions together. And I got to know the Reverend John G. Gato even better during the marriage of his baby sister, the late Paris Waidera. I was lucky to serve as the best man. When Waidera was joined in marriage to my friend, Professor Stephen G. Joanna. And I remember that day again very, very vividly at the Kambui Church. The Reverend John G. Gato was there, the Reverend Nikonge was there, and when I say the Reverend Nikonge, I am sure that evokes memories of quite a number of persons here. We have been waiting for this book, and I am going to explain why many have been waiting for the arrival of this book. When I was writing my thesis, the PhD thesis, at the University of Notre Dame in Indiana, in the USA, I mentioned the Reverend John G. Gato and his spirit of selfhood in my PhD dissertation. Because my supervisor said, yes, you are writing on the Roman Catholic Church, but you need to write on the church and on the universal church. And in order to make sure that you have covered the church adequately, you must choose two other traditions. Besides the two congregations that I was looking at, I was looking at the impact of the Holy Ghost Fathers and the Consolata Fathers in this country, the impact on education and on development. My supervisors, I had a supervisor from the University of Cambridge, he said you need to select two other traditions that are not Roman Catholic. Therefore, I selected the Presbyterian Church of East Africa and the Anglican Church, their contribution to education and development, and that was how the idea of selfhood found itself in my dissertation. And we are talking of quite a number of years ago because I got my PhD in the year 1991. And that idea is already contained in this book. And this book has been reviewed by quite a number of people. Edward Shorter, Adrian Hastings. It was reviewed in the Sunday edition when it appeared. Later, I wrote two articles in the Daily Nation referring to the Reverend Gato's call for selfhood. On Friday, May 19, 2017, my article in the Daily Nation said, and I quote, within the PCEA, his call to end the flow of missionary personnel and funds to Africa in the moratorium debate will remain etched in the memories of many. Therefore, there is a very, very true sense in which we were anticipating the arrival of this book, because it mentions selfhood, and John Gato explicitly. And then on Thursday, May 31, 2018, I wrote an article titled in the Daily Nation, John Gato, full colon, trailblazer who molded the Jitegemea spirit. And you can, if you Google John Gato's name and my name, the article is going to come up. Now, that article was criticized heavily by a commentator who objected that a Roman Catholic priest had praised John Gato too much. But one can see that a full-fledged book on Jitegemea that has been waited for a long time. My article had predicted I am not going to say prophesied, because I had not prophesied. I had simply predicted that a book on Jitegemea would see the day of late. Point number 5, because I have points and I'll be able to share this with Kevashia. The Reverend Gato was one of the pioneers who argued for a self-supporting, self-governing, and self-propagating church in Africa. But he gave this formula, Henry Venn's formula, because it is a formula that had been created at the Salisbury Square in London, as has been mentioned here earlier. The Reverend John Gato gave this formula a signature, which is truly the signature of John G. Gato. On page 465 of this book, this 465 page work has 4 major themes, namely 1, selfhood, 2, self-sacrifice, self-reliance, 3, witness, 4, stewardship. In all, there are 54 speeches, essays, poems. And we wanted to thank Mr. Kevashi Agato and Mwaura Kara and the editors of the book for selecting this rich and edifying literature, because this is rich and edifying literature. This is a book that has been written from the heart of the Reverend John G. Gato. It is writing from the heart. But it is not simply writing from the heart. It is writing from the heart that has been very, very well thought out. And therefore, from the heart, through the mind. That is what we find in this book. The homilies and speeches are of a wide-ranging nature in the divine human encounter. They talk about the contemporary or present-day challenges, including matters of nationhood, job creation, addictions to booze and drugs. But the central theme is on selfhood, which is illustrated by the command of Jesus to the person with disability: get up, take up your mat, and walk. This is what Jitegemea means. Point number 6. This opus has been endorsed by a wide range of persons, including the Reverend Dr. Prosson K. Guria, Chairman, who already spoke here, the very Reverend John G. Gato Hibiri Foundation, Dr. Bright Gabriel Maudo, PhD Senior Fellow and the Dean of Wisconsin International University College, a business school, North Legon, Accra, Ghana, and Mwaura Kara, social commentator, rights advocate, and public policy strategist. My summary of this book. In this publication, the very Reverend John G. Gato teaches us several important lessons, including 1, courage. The Reverend Gato was a minister of the gospel of courage. One is reminded of the words in Romans: we were not called to a spirit of fear and timidity, but one of courage. 2, resilience. 3, innovation. The very, very fact that he called for moratorium, when many other, first of all, the donors in the West were very, very nervous about that. And I must say one thing, and I will say it without fear. One of the most remarkable traits and features in the apostolate of the Reverend John G. Gato was connected with courage and innovation. He himself said, yes, moratorium here and now. My own bishop, the late Maurice Michael Kano Otunga, who also wanted the church to become independent and who was also arguing for selfhood, but in a very, very soft way. He said, no, let the missionaries not depart at the present moment. Let us wait. I mean, it is a fact. And against the argument, against the fact, there can be no argument. Both had the same objective, but very, very different means of attaining that objective. For taking pride in ourselves, taking pride in our past, confidence in facing the future, we are loved and cared for by God and a spirit of gratitude. To conclude, I have a word from the publishers from one of the national dailies that they'll be publishing my review of this book pretty soon, and therefore I am not going to try to say everything at the present moment. And if I say everything and they come to hear of it, then they may not want to publish that article. Therefore, I am not going to say everything. But I would once again like to thank Kefashiratu and Warakara and the editors because they have done a very, very fine job in selecting and in editing this remarkable and seminal work. My teacher, who was also the teacher of quite a number of people here, Professor Joseph G. Rondas, said when you go to speak, just stand up, speak up, and shut up. Shut up. Thank you very much, and may God bless you. Shukran.
Tupongeze Father Professor Lawrence. Asante na kupongeza sana kwa mazungumzo yako. Thank you very much for what you have eloquently made clear to us about the Jitegemea book. I also want to recognize your mastery of the microphone. You know when to go up and out, which makes it very nice. Let's appreciate Professor Father Lawrence Kuroge. Now we are almost getting to our chief guest, our guest speaker, and most of us are waiting to hear from him. And I want to invite now Jerry Kangede to come and now invite Professor B.L. Let's put our hands together for Jerry Kangede.
Dear friends, sisters, and brothers in the Lord, this is the moment we've all been waiting for. I must apologize, I'm not as good with the mic as Professor Njoroge is. I'm as good as Guru Kenyatta. So I'm doing these things. If you allow me, Vice Chancellor, my sister, Professor Wangari, I beg to ride on the protocols that have already been observed here in the interest of time so that we cut to the chase. Now, it's now an equal privilege and honor to introduce to this great congregation our guest speaker, who although is no stranger to many amongst us, is a man who is bigger than life. And I want to pause here and say, Professor did warn me, and he said, you know, I love long introductions, and coming from Professor Lumumba is more of a court order or a caveat. But what he didn't realize is that I'll be speaking from the pulpit. And from here, Prof, I have all the immunities and privileges that appertain to those who stand behind the pulpit. I'm also Presbyterian, this is my home turf. I'm to Putendereza, and we walk in the light, so I must introduce it properly so that you know that we are in fellowship. Professor Patrick Lodge Otieno Lumumba, who is popularly known as PLO, is a Pan-Africanist par excellence, and one who has distinguished himself as a proponent of the doctrine and praxis of African solutions to African problems. It is no wonder then that his name is spoken in the same breath with those of the icons and fathers of transformation of the African continent. To name but a few, his namesake, Patrice Lumumba of the DRC, Kwame Nkrumah of Ghana, Thomas Sankara of Burkina Faso, and Nyerere Julius Nyerere of Tanzania, and you can see dresses like Nyerere, and Jomo Kenyatta of Kenya. Those who have listened to PLO's passionate speeches on decolonization of Africa and her people, delivered with great energy, enthusiasm, and honesty, and I dare say very innovative at that, as you will get to hear in a moment, will agree with me that he made the foundation, and indeed the Presbyterian University would not have found a better person to deliver the keynote address on the launch of a book whose authors go to Jitegemea, not only propositions a doctrine and a philosophy, but propels the same into a movement, what he calls a happy confrontation, which the church in Africa and Africans themselves must embrace in faith if they are going to break the shackles of colonization. As many of us here are aware, the author, the very Reverend Dr. John G. Gatto, was an accomplished poet, a wordsmith, an eloquent speaker, and sometimes when the spirit moved, a thespian par excellence. It is therefore no idle coincidence that today's keynote address on Jitegemea will be delivered by none other than PLO himself. Professor Lumumba, because I'm also aware that I'm in an institution of higher education, an accomplished law scholar and practitioner, holds a Bachelor of Laws degree and a Master of Laws degree from the University of Nairobi, a PhD in laws from the University of Ghent in Belgium. His PhD thesis, Father Joroge gave me the courage because he spoke about his own thesis, which is an acclaimed contribution to legal scholarship in the law of the sea, is entitled Exclusive Economic Zone, the Use of Delimitation of Economic Zones. Over and above his stellar career in the academia as a professor of law at the University of Nairobi, I must confess I'm one of his students, and I didn't turn out too badly, Prof, did I? And founding dean of Kabarak Law School, PLO has an impressive public service career as well. He served as the Secretary of the Constitution of Kenya Review Commission, Director of the Anti-Corruption Commission, the forerunner of the present-day Ethics and Anti-Corruption Commission, and Director of the Kenya School of Law. Currently, he's Africa's ambassador at large, and we'll talk a bit about that himself. A prolific writer in law and politics, PLO is published both locally and internationally. Some of his seminal works include, but are not limited to, Kenya's Quest for Constitution, The Postponed Promise, Call for Political Hygiene in Kenya, The Constitution of Kenya 2010, an introductory commentary, and for those who speak Hebrew, Angomaraj. PLO, a black belt Katareka, is married to one wife, Celestine Lumumba, and they are both blessed with two lovely daughters. Ladies and gentlemen, behold the man, PLO.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Let me start by saying how glad I am to be in this august assembly. Like the Vice at Princeton, where the whole idea of selfhood had started emerging. In many quarters then, some commentators were beginning to ask whether Jitegemea was a slogan or a philosophy. Today we can say that it is a philosophy. And the reason why we can say so is that we have had the advantage of seeing the growth process of an idea that was mooted very early on and which over the year has matured. Those of you who have had the advantage of reading this book will note that it starts with a speech delivered in 1971 and concludes with a sermon delivered in 1988. That in itself helps to demonstrate that this idea was maturing. And if you look at the very carefully chosen poems that were written sometimes when he was airborne, you can begin to see that the very Reverend John Gatu thought about this idea of Jitegemea in a very deep way. Those of you who have once again had the advantage of reading the epigraphs that are to be found at the beginning of the book, he starts with what he describes as a Bukinabe proverb, that he, and I'm adding she, who sleeps on a borrowed mat will never sleep easy. And one can begin to understand what he was grappling with. One can begin to understand what he was grappling with because there is a sense in which Africa still finds herself in a very unfortunate space. Those of you who are older will remember that the very process that makes legitimate the whole idea about Jitegemea has a long history. This mother continent is a continent that has been abused and continues to be abused. You will remember that this continent, which remains diverse, has borne the brand of slavery. And I dare say that even now, slavery is alive and well in some parts of the continent of Africa. This continent bore the brand of being arbitrarily divided into what are now 54 countries. This continent then fought the battle of decolonization. But the question is, apart from having new flags, national anthem, and sometimes national slogans, are we really decolonized? These are questions that are alive in our minds. Permit me to say, at the risk of irritating those who are clergy and those who are believers like myself, that even Christianity, midwife to us, was on the basis of partition of countries. So that one denomination was dominant in one area, another denomination in another area, another one in another area, and we find ourselves in that space. So that when the very Reverend John Gatu is grappling with the whole question of Christianity, he is not afraid to ask. And he asks it when he talks about Christianity and the indigenous ways of life. Something that some of us who are Christians are afraid to talk about. And yet, he mentions this, face of spiritual confusion. He grapples with those issues. He grapples with issues that may be described as ecumenical. He does not allow himself to be imprisoned in theology. He does not allow himself to be dogmatic about critical issues. He does not allow himself to be imprisoned by certain dictates, which in his view do not allow us to enjoy the full flavor and splendor of Christianity and God. And that is, in my view, what then gives depth and meaning to Jitegemea. Because what is Jitegemea is self-reliance. And there is no shortage of individuals who have grappled with this issue over the years. The whole struggle for the liberation of enslaved peoples was about regaining ourselves, because the entire enterprise known as slavery was designed to dehumanize, to make us believe that we were less than human beings. And even today, I dare say, there is a sense in which we in the African continent, in our unguarded moments, behave as if we are inferior. Many are the times when I listen to people from different parts of the continent of Africa. When an African does a good thing, they say never do. In other words, we take them in our unguarded moments. There is only the Modoko who can do a good thing. That in itself tells you that the impact of slavery and colonization was deep. It did not only affect our minds, but our instincts were also undermined by it. When I was reading this book, I could not help but remember the words of one of the leading Pan-Africanists, W.E.B. Du Bois, who is mentioned several times in this book. And I remember Du Bois said in those early days in the United States of America, during the civil rights movement and the early days of Pan-Africanism, that one of the things that people of African origin had to do was to liberate themselves, which is what gives meaning to the Kiswahili saying, Jishinde ushindi. So Jitegemea is the clarion call. Is the clarion call to all of us who are here present to conquer ourselves, because it is only through personal conquest that we can exercise the ghost of low self-esteem, which so continues to afflict us and which we have no other way than to exercise. I can hear the words of the very Reverend John Gatu when in 1971 he said, "Let us have a moratorium on foreign aid and foreign assistance." Because history has demonstrated not once, not twice, but times without number, that what is called aid is sometimes debilitating, and it retains you in a perpetual state and stage of childhood. He was reminding us that if it is true that we have regained our independence in the political arena, if it is true that we have come of age, and I'm using the word term of age as a term of art, if it is true that we are in charge of our affairs, how can it be, the Reverend John Gardner was asking, how can it be that we must continue to have the word of God midwife to us by others? Can't we midwife it ourselves? I can hear him saying that. I can hear him saying, how can it be that when we want to build our churches, we must still allow others to build it for us? Are we children of a lesser God? I can hear the very Reverend John Gardner posing that uncomfortable question. I can hear him saying, we cannot afford the luxury of waiting. We must do it now. It must be a cold shower, shock therapy experience, because it is only then that our instincts to innovate and invent will be sharpened. I can hear him say that. But like all before him, when you come with a new idea, you have no shortage of individuals whose only claim to fame is to find fault. And he had no shortage of such fault finders. But an idea whose time has come, an idea that is relevant and whose agenda is to change people, can be beaten from all sides, but the reality is it remains alive, even when it is in comatose and its obituary is prematurely written. That is what happened with the Jitegemea philosophy. Those who thought that it had died, those who had written its obituary, today is the day that we are telling them, no, it is alive and well. It is alive and well because we live in times when this philosophy is as green can be. We live in times in the continent of Africa where when we as Christians are questioning our Christianity, we are asking ourselves, have we picked up our mats and are we walking, or we are still in spiritual diapers? I'm suggesting to us that the Reverend God is telling us we cannot afford that luxury. The time is now to give practical meaning to the whole idea of self. You know, sometimes when I read the Bible and I listen very carefully to some of the words that were spoken by Christ, and I wonder how deep it was. When you ask Christ, and who is my neighbor? He does not tell you Njoroge is my neighbor. He says, no, there was a person. He was walking between Jericho and Jerusalem. And he tells you a story, and then you answer the question yourself. You say, that is my neighbor. The Reverend John Gatu, in that very same spirit, is telling us, what is selfhood? What must we do in order to be truly liberated? What is it that we must do as Christians? What is it that we must do as believers? What is it that we must do to give practical meaning to the words of Christ, even in our diversity? You know, in one of his speeches, is an Africa where our selfhood has disappeared. It is an Africa where when I look at her, wherever she is, she's suffering from pain. You go to Sudan, there is pain. You go to Somalia, there is pain. You go to the northern part of Kenya, there is pain. You go to Eastern Congo, there is pain. You go to Central African Republic, there is pain. You go to Northern Mozambique, there is pain. You go to Southern Cameroon, there is pain. You go to Libya, there is pain. You go to the Sahel, there is pain. Pain has become our companion. And it has become our companion so much that we even depend on others to liberate ourselves from pain. When we cannot feed ourselves, we look to others to supply us with grain. When we cannot supply our own medicine, we look to others to supply us with medicine. When we want to print our very own Bible, we print them in China. This is the space in which we find ourselves. And the Reverend John was telling us that we cannot afford to do that. Because if we continue in that space, then it reminds me of this parable. The parable that we talk about of the talents. You know, and it's not a shortage of theologians and very seasoned preachers here. But allow me, even if I get it wrong, to say what I'm about to say. Whenever I read that story of the talents, this rich man who went away for a long time, to one he gave 5 talents, to another one he gave 2 talents, to another one he gave 1 talent. And the Bible records that he went away for a long time. And when he came back to the one that he gave 5 years, do you have your 5? He says, Master, I've worked the 5 and I have 10. And to the one that he gave, he said, Master, I've worked the 2 and I have 4. And he said to the one that he gave 1, I knew you. You are in the business of reaping where you did not sow. I kept it, here it is. Sometimes when I look at the way we behave, it is as if we are the ones who are given 1 talent. And you know, the Bible says, it said, and to those who have, even the who do not have, even the little that they have, shall be taken away and it shall be given to those who have. Just look at our context. The richest in resources, yet the poorest. Why? How can we make the claim that we have gold, that we have silver, that we have everything on earth, but our greatest claim to fame is that our leaders spend most of their time running around the world with gold, begging. And the story is one and the same. The beggar shall always serve the giver. The Reverend John Gatwo was telling us, stop begging because you have enough. It is said in the Bible, what do you have in your hand? I remember that story. That question was asked of Moses, what do you have in your hand? And it is that rod that became the rod that liberated the Israelites. And the woman, the widow, what you have in your hand, it is what you have in your hand that you must use. And I'm daring to say that the Reverend John Gatto is telling us what we have in our hand is our self-esteem. That self-esteem is what we must use in order to liberate ourselves from the chains of sorrow and want. We have begged for too long. We have been insulted for too long. We have been abused for too long. We have become professional beggars for too long. The time is now to liberate ourselves. And the only way that we can liberate ourselves is courtesy of philosophy of Jitegemea. You know, many years ago, the great Tanzanian President Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere was asked in Kiswahili, siri ya maendeleo ni nini?